Resentment is a slow building, deep-seated emotion that develops when someone feels wronged, undervalued, or directly disrespected. It often arises from misunderstandings, unresolved conflict, and suppressed emotions. And the problem is that it does result in very toxic behaviors such as passive-aggressiveness and such as completely blowing up and having very explosive arguments instead of having calm, collected communication. In this video, we're going to explore how resentment builds and what you can do to prevent it. So let's start looking at how it builds. A key factor here is unmet expectations. If we have certain expectations when it comes to our partner, fulfilling our needs or keeping certain promises or behaving in a certain way or achieving certain things, and those expectations aren't being met, then we can feel let down and upset. An example could be a husband expecting his wife to plan something really special for his birthday and she doesn't do it. She doesn't know that he has these expectations, so she doesn't do anything, and then he feels undervalued, unloved. It can also build when someone feels unappreciated or taken for granted. So if you're in a relationship and you feel like what you're giving is not being reciprocated in the same way, maybe you're a giver, maybe you love to give, but if the other person isn't giving that back to you, eventually you can start feeling resentful. It can be when someone carries either the emotional or the practical burden in a relationship. A very typical thing that can start resentment is if one person is the one who has the mental load around the house, dishes, cooking, cleaning, paying rent, like all the responsibilities. If that isn't equally distributed in a fair and great way in the relationship when you live together, that can really be a root cause of a lot of resentment building up. And when resentment gets really strong, it completely overshadows all other aspects in the relationship. So it's very destructive. Resentment builds because we don't express our emotions. So the thing is, you might be suppressing your emotions on a daily basis because you don't want to cause conflict. Maybe you're afraid of conflict. Maybe you have some avoidant tendencies, or maybe you're just sort of walking on eggshells and you don't want to rock the boat. But feelings are feelings, and unless you process them or communicate them or do something with them, they're not going to go away. So suppressing emotions never works. That will result in you blowing up eventually and having a very explosive argument. But this is one of the reasons why resentment builds, a lack of communication, and that's why it's so effective to do couples coaching or couples counseling. You're welcome to reach out to me. There's a link in the description below. Because you make sure that you address all of your issues, that you talk them through, even if you have to have an argument, even if you have to fight. It's actually better than building up this resentment. Another one is when our boundaries are being violated again and again and again. Let's say our partner is doing something that is really violating our boundaries. And for you, that can be individual. There are the obvious ones, like they flirt with other people in front of you, or they're liking girls' photos on Instagram, or there are obvious ones like that. But there are also other ones that may be specific to you and what your boundaries are. Maybe you need silence in the house in the afternoon when you get home from work, and they continue to play loud music every day or several times a week when you come home from work, and it feels like such a boundary violation for you. Or maybe you don't feel like being intimate when you're on your period and your partner constantly pushes for that intimacy, or it can be whatever is specific for you. But if you feel like your boundaries are being violated again and again and again, then eventually you will start feeling resentment. Of course, again, you could communicate this to your partner, and if they love you and have good intentions, and if they're a good person, then they're going to try and take that into consideration, and hopefully it won't be a problem. Resentment can also build from feeling unfairness. So this is something I can really relate to myself. Like if I feel that something is unfair in terms of the chores that me and my husband have in the house, I get very, very resentful. I really hold a grudge and it's hard for me to let go of. So things have to be fair. You have to feel that the agreement you have with your partner is a fair agreement. And you have to consider all the moving parts and sit down and have a conversation about what's your responsibility, what's my responsibility to avoid this. Lack of appreciation is also a really big one, because we want to do sweet things and loving things for our partner, but if that's not appreciated, if they don't say thank you, if they don't acknowledge what we're doing for them, that builds resentment too. And I think that can often happen in relationships where both people feel that whenever there's something wrong, you end up nagging, but when the person is doing something right around the house, apparently this is my primary example in this video, but if the other person does something good around the house, cleans or something, then you don't appreciate it. You don't say thank you. You don't acknowledge that they did it. But once they do something wrong, you'll be sure to nitpick and acknowledge, and that builds resentment too. So how do we overcome resentment? First, we have to identify the source. Why are you resentful? This is something you need to do with yourself before you talk to your significant other about it. Why are you feeling resentful? Is something unfair? Do you feel lack of acknowledgement? Do you feel disrespected? Are boundaries being violated? Do you feel undervalued? What is the problem? Is there just a complete lack of communication in your relationship in general? Try to see if you can pinpoint what it is. And next, look at how long has this been going on? Has it been for years? Has it been for months? And then you have a pretty good idea of what we're working with here. Next thing you have to do is that you have to communicate openly and as early in the process as possible, because the longer you wait, the more resentment will build up, and the less likely it is that you will be able to communicate in a calm, collected, super healthy way. The more irritated you are, the more explosive you're going to be in the way you communicate these resentments, or the more passive aggressive you're going to be. I can be guilty of being passive aggressive and I hate it. I try to catch myself when I am like that, because I just know that how it feels for the other person to be on the receiving end of that. It just doesn't feel good. So communicate as early as you possibly can. Preferably do weekly check-ins or monthly check-ins where you check in with each other. Has there been anything this month? Maybe it turns into an argument and you kind of want to avoid it, but it's still better than resentment building up. Even better, you can sometimes address these issues when they come up. Not if you're feeling triggered, then you need to cool down first. But if you feel just mildly annoyed, say it immediately. If you're super triggered, you have to re-regulate before you say anything. That's a good rule of thumb. Actually, I made a video about handling triggers. I'll link to it up here. But yeah, make sure you communicate in a good way with I statements. Don't blame the other person too much. Don't say you should always assume that your partner is doing the best that they can. So try not to blame them and say more like, I need this and that. This is how I feel. They may still feel attacked. They probably will, but then at least you've done your part to communicate in a way where you don't directly blame the other person. And then, of course, you have to set some boundaries. If another person is consistently taking advantage of you, knowingly or unknowingly, then you have the responsibility to say no. You have the responsibility to not do the dishes then. And I know that there are going to be dirty dishes in the sink, but you just got it. You've got to enforce those boundaries. You've got to show the person that if they continue to show this behavior that is making you feel this way, that there are going to be consequences for that, because there are. Every action in life has some kind of consequence. And then work on your expectations. Not everyone has the same level of idea of what is right and wrong as you. Most likely, your partner has a completely different idea of how to run a household and what's important and what's not important. And again, the household is our example here. It can also be lots of other things in a relationship, but people have different ideas about what's right and wrong. So just because something is your expectations doesn't mean it's right. So you should just also try and adjust your expectations and focus on what you can control. And what you can control is yourself and what you do, right? So if you feel resentful, then don't take over responsibility in the relationship. Then don't mother your partner. Don't cuddle your partner if that does make you feel resentful. And again, that's something you should really have a communicative talk about, you and your partner. What are your expectations in the relationship? In general, you should always keep your focus on self-care, self-love. Don't neglect yourself. Please don't do that. It also builds resentment. So do things that you love. Make sure you put some time on the schedule every week for something that you love. Try to not overgive if you feel like it's not being reciprocated. And just in general, work on your communication skills. The problem with resentment is that it hurts your partner, yes, but you know what? It hurts you even more. You're in such a grumpy, bad mood when you feel resentful. And if that's the undercurrent of your entire day, every day, then your quality of life decreases. So try and work on letting go. Work with a professional. Like I said, please reach out to me if you want to work with me. Link in the description below. Try to find ways, meditation, mindfulness. I made a great exercise actually video with something called box breathing. That's really good for letting go. I'll link to it up here. But try and work on letting go because it's really not healthy. And if you can't do it through communication, try to find your own tools to release this resentment. Resentment is a sign that something needs to change, whether that be in your boundaries, the way you operate, or the way the other person operates, or the dynamic is in the relationship. So the sooner you can address it, the better. I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.